بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
آداب إسلامية. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليقل خيرا أو ليصمت، ومن كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليكرم جاره، ومن كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليكرم ضيفه.
والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه ومن بارك proceed. Today's hadith number what? You are awake. Okay. That's quite a pause. So hadith number 15 is the hadith about Man kana yu'minu billahi wal yawm al-akhir. This hadith is reported by Bukhari and Muslim from Abu Hurayrah radiyallahu anhu. So it's agreed upon. Once it's reported by Bukhari and Muslim, it's called what? Muttafaqun alayhi. Means what? Agreed upon. So Bukhari and Muslim agreed on this hadith. And that's the highest degree of authenticity. Short of al-mutawatir. We're talking here about the singular reports, not the continuous testimony reports, which is a hadith al-mutawatir that is reported by a large number of people in every layer of the chain of narration. So the chain of narration is when you say from so-and-so who reported from so-and-so who reported from so-and-so. That is the chain of narration. If you have in every layer a large number of people, that's called continuous testimony, which is al-mutawatir. And that is the highest form of authenticity at all. And this is equal in authenticity of transmission to the Quran, because the Quran is reported by continuous testimony. So al-hadith al-mutawatir is equal in the strength of transmission to al-Quran. But the hadith al-mutawatir, particularly, we're not talking about the wording, just the meaning. A few hundred hadith al-mutawatir in meaning. The rest are singular reports. And in the singular reports, the highest degree of authenticity is that which is reported by Bukhari and Muslim together. Muttafaqun alayhi. So this hadith was reported by Bukhari and Muslim, and it is reported from Abu Hurayrah radiallahu anhu. That is the Sahabi. Usually when we say reported from, we skip the chain except for the Sahabi. We mention the Sahabi. Because each hadith is known by the Sahabi who reported it. But we skip the chain unless we're sitting in a hadith class. Then you go over the chain and you discuss the narrators one by one. But if it is not a hadith class, it's a tazkiyah class or a fiqh class and so on, you skip the chain. So Bukhari and Muslim reported from Abu Hurayrah does not mean that Bukhari and Muslim saw Abu Hurayrah. It means that the chain ends with Abu Hurayrah. So they reported from someone, and reported from someone, and from Abu Hurayrah. Bukhari and Muslim then reported from Abu Hurayrah radiallahu anhu that he said, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليقل خيرا أو ليصمت. من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليقل خيرا أو ليصمت. ومن كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليكرم جاره. ومن كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليكرم ضيفه. من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر, he who believes in Allah and the final day. Yawm al-Akhir means the final day. You could translate this as the day of judgment. That would be a liberal translation. Basically you're translating the meaning. You're not translating the word, the phrase Prophet ﷺ spoke of. But Yawm al-Akhir means the final day. So من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر, he who believes in Allah and the final day, فليقل خيرا, let him speak good, أو ليصمت, or stay silent. فليقل خيرا أو ليصمت, let him speak good or stay silent. وَمَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ, and he who believes in Allah and the final day. فَلْيُكْرِمْ جَارَهُ, let him honor, let him treat with generosity his neighbor. Honor his neighbor, treat him with generosity, be kind to his neighbor. Karam is generosity. Treat his neighbor with generosity. It is also about graciousness, with graciousness. So من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليكرم جاره ومن كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر, and he who believes in Allah and the final day, فليكرم ضيفه, let him honor his guest or guests. So this is certainly like another beautiful hadith. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and they are all beautiful. In this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ talks to us about al-Iman, who has faith and who does not have faith. He who has faith should do these things, because these a'mal, these actions, are part of faith. And we said that al-a'mal dakhila fi ism al-iman, that actions are part of faith. The Prophet ﷺ said al-iman bid'un wa sab'una shu'aba. Iman is 70 some parts. A'laha la ilaha illallah, the highest of which is the kalima, la ilaha illallah. Wa adnaha imatatul adha an al-tariq, and the lowest is removing harm off the way. وَالْحَيَاءُ شُعْبَةٌ مِنْ شُعْبِ الْإِيمَانِ, and modesty is one part of Iman. Modesty is one part of Iman. Which means what? It means that actions are parts of Iman. And in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ tells us of some actions that are considered part of Iman. But the beauty of this hadith is that, those actions, some of them are the rights of Allah, and some of them are the rights of the people, right? Some of them are actions of the tongue, and some of them are actions of the body. Some of them are actions, and some of them are abstentions. Turuk, amal wa tark. Amal is action, tark is abstention, to leave out. So this hadith combined all of them, right? Where are the rights of Allah here? فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرًا أَوْ لِيَصْمُتْ, let him speak good or stay silent. Because speak good or stay silent is not only about harming people. Certainly that's part of it. You don't speak that which is harmful, that which is offensive. But it is also about speaking good in general. So you cannot fabricate lies against Allah. You cannot mock the signs of Allah. You could not, tell jokes about the angels, for instance. Some people have the audacity to do that. So, مَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرًا أَوْ لِيَصْمُتْ. This is the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. يُكْرِمْ ضَيْفَهُ يُكْرِمْ جَارَهُ, honor his guest, honor his neighbor. These are the rights of people. So this hadith combined between the rights of Allah and the rights of the people. It combined between action and inaction, abstention, leaves. Because فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرًا أَوْ لِيَصْمُتْ, speak the good or stay silent. Stay silent is inaction. It's abstention, abstaining from speech. So it has this and it has that. This hadith also has the two angles of actions, or the two arms of actions. Actions of the tongue, actions of the body, speech and bodily actions. And, فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرًا أَوْ لِيَصْمُتْ, action of the tongue, speak good or stay silent, action of the tongue. The rest are actions of the body. And the tongue could be involved also in honoring your guest and honoring your neighbor. So, let's try to remember this hadith. Can we repeat? مَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرًا أَوْ لِيَصْمُتْ. وَمَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ فليكرم جاره ومن كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليكرم ضيفه. Now, let's start with من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليقل خيرا أو ليصمت. He who believes in Allah and the final day, let him speak good or stay silent. This reminds us of a hadith that is also reported through Abu Hurayrah, also by Bukhari and Muslim, in which the Prophet ﷺ said, إن الرجل لا يتكلم بالكلمة من رضوان الله لا يلقي لها بالا يرفعه الله بها درجات وإن الله لا يتكلم بالكلمة من سخط الله لا يلقي لها بالا يهوي بها في النار. وفي رواية الترمذي 70 خريفا. So this hadith is also agreed upon from Abu Hurayrah radiallahu anhu. The Prophet ﷺ said, إن الرجل لا يتكلم بالكلمة. A man speaks a word من رضوان الله, that earns him the pleasure of Allah. لا يلقي لها بالا. He doesn't give much thought to it. He doesn't pay too much attention to it. يرفعه الله بها درجة. Allah will raise him by many degrees, many ranks. Allah, will raise him by it many ranks. So someone may say, لا يلقي لها بالا. He does not give much thought to it, does not pay much attention to it. Why is he being rewarded if he had no intention? Why is he being rewarded? He had no intention. He said, the Prophet ﷺ said, does not give much thought to it. لا يلقي لها بالا. Does not pay attention, does not give much thought. Let's finish the hadith first. وإن الرجل لا يتكلم بالكلمة من سخط الله لا يلقي لها بالا يهوي بها في النار. وفي رواية الترمذي 70 خريفا. وإن الرجل, and a man may speak a word yet لا يتكلم بالكلمة من سخط الله, that earns him the anger of Allah, لا يلقي لها بالا, but he doesn't give much thought to it, doesn't pay attention to it. يهوي بها في النار, he falls into the fire thereby. And in the report of the Tirmidhi, there is an addition, 70 kharifan, 70 folds, 70 fold seasons. Kharif is the fall, the season. But he means here 70 years. 70 years. 70 kharifan, 70 years. So, but the question is, why is he being rewarded anyway? لا يبقي لها بالا, does not give much thought to it. Don't we know that إنما الأعمال بالنيات, deeds are but by their intentions?
There is one verse in the Quran where Allah says, a man speaks not a word except that angel records it.
ما يلفظ من قول إلا لديه رقيب عتيد. He does not speak a word except that he will have two angels by him, Raqib, a watcher over him, Atid, a recorder who records it. Yes, right, but once again, like, why is he being rewarded if he does not pay attention to what he said? If he didn't pay attention, just said it. Because he trained himself to be good until goodness became a second nature for him. He trained himself to speak good until he speaks good as like this is his second nature. He's polite and courteous. He's good, helpful, not offensive, as a second nature. And then if it becomes a second nature, Allah does not punish you by depriving you of reward. You have gotten to a point where goodness became your nature. You're speaking goodness, kindly, respectfully, properly, just because this has become your nature. So will Allah then deprive you of reward because you have gotten yourself all the way to this point where you made goodness your nature? No, He will not. Allah is more generous than to do this. Okay, so لا يلقي لها بالا. But then, at the same time, the other one is not given thought also. In the رجل لا يتكلم بالكلمة من سخط الله, a man that speaks, a word that earns him the anger of Allah, لا يلقي لها بالا, does not give much thought to it, يهوي بها في النار, he falls into the hellfire thereby for 70 years. He keeps on falling for 70 years into the hellfire because of the word. Now, this person is not paying attention to what he said also, but that does not exempt him from the punishment. Does not exempt him from it, because what he is required to do is to stay silent. What he's required to do is to think about what he will say before he says it. Tabarani reported from Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, إِنَّكَ لَا تَزَالُ سَالِمًا ما لم تتكلم فإن تكلمت كتبت لك أو عليك إنك لا تزال سالما, you will continue to be safe ما لم تتكلم, so long as you did not speak. فإن تكلمت, once you speak, كتبت لك, it will be recorded for you أو عليك, or against you. That's it. Therefore you are required to think of what you say. You're required to think of it before you say it. Because oftentimes we have like those little arguments between us, and then you say to your brother or sister or wife or husband or son or daughter or father or mother, I didn't really think much of it. No, you're wrong. You should have thought much of it. You should have thought a lot about it before you spoke. So it is a requirement that you stay silent all the time until you have verified that what you will say would be good. فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرًا أَوْ لِيَصْمُتْ. That's basically the meaning of فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرًا أَوْ لِيَصْمُتْ. Let him speak good or stay silent. Because the Prophet ﷺ said that there is only two types of speech, good and bad. So unless you verify that it is good, it is going to be bad. Because guess what? Even frivolous speech is bad. And it has been reported that the Prophet ﷺ said, فَإِنَّ كَثْرَةَ الْكَلَامِ تُقَسِّي الْقَلْبِ وَلَيْسَ أَبْعَدَ من رحمة الله من صاحب القلب القاسي. So for speaking much causes hardness to the heart, causes the heart to become hardened. And no one is farther removed from the mercy of Allah than the one who has a hardened heart. A heart that is hardened, not soft, not tender. So in this case, this is an important exercise for us. To learn to stay silent. A beautiful exercise. Try to do it. Don't listen to this lecture and just go home and do the same thing. You know, go about your business the same way. This means that this item is not nafa for you. It's not beneficial. And the one who holds the item that's not beneficial, his parable in the Quran is very bad. His parable in the Quran, like a donkey carrying scriptures. So whenever you hear any you have to act upon it. Otherwise, the parable in the Quran is very bad for those who hold knowledge which they don't act on. So we exercise silence, and you try to do this. And then, every time you want to utter a word, the Salaf, the righteous predecessors, used to say, let it go through your heart first. It has to go through your heart. That means it goes through your mind, because it would not go through your heart until it had gone through your mind. The mind is less intricate than the heart. It is more superficial. The heart is deeper than the mind. The heart is a step higher from the mind. So it goes through your mind first, you know what it means, and you know the balance of benefit and harm, and whether it's like a good word, offensive word, and so on and so forth. That's the mind. The heart will take care of the rest. Is this for Allah? Is this the right time? Is this the right place? The right situation? Am I saying this to the right person? at the right time, in the right place, in the right situation, for the right purpose, which is the pleasure of Allah. All of that is really processed by the heart, is handled by the heart. So let it go through your heart, meaning let it go through your mind, and then through your heart, and then speak. And if we train ourselves to do this, you will be speaking much less. And then you will have much less to worry about when you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you speak much less. Al-Fudayl ibn Iyad, one of the great Zuhad of the Tabi'in, he said, ما حج ولا رباط ولا جهاد أشد من حبس النفس من حبس اللسان. ما حج ولا رباط ولا جهاد أشد من حبس اللسان. ومن أصبح يهمه لسانه أصبح في هم عظيم. ما حج not hajj, wala riba, no riba, which is guarding the posts at the borders. Wala jihad, nor jihad. Ashadda is harder than, more difficult than, min habs al-lisan, than restraining your tongue. Than restraining your tongue. وَمَنْ أَصْبَحَ يُهِمُّهُ لِسَانُهُ, and he who rises in the morning, wakes up in the morning, concerned about his tongue, أَصْبَحَ فِي هَمٍّ عَظِيمٍ. He would be much occupied. He would rise with great worries. With great worries. Because you're afraid, the thing that you're afraid of the most is not, your supervisor at work, is not your enemy, is not, the neighbor who's, been bad to you. It is your own tongue. You're afraid of this the most. So if you wake up every day in the morning concerned about your tongue, you're waking up with great worries. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, one time Umar ibn Abdul Aziz always surrounded himself with the company of scholars. He was one of the greatest scholars of his time. And he surrounded himself also with the company of scholars. So one scholar said in his company that I think that the one who الصامت عن علم كالمتكلم عن علم. I think the one who speaks, who stays silent based on knowledge, is like one who speaks out of knowledge, or on the basis of knowledge. Then Umar ibn Abdul Aziz said to him, but I hope that the one who speaks on the basis of knowledge will be greater in the sight of Allah on the Day of Judgment than the one who stays silent on the basis of knowledge, because the one who speaks his speech will be beneficial for others, whereas the one who stays silent, his silence will be only beneficial for him. Will be only beneficial for him. Then the man said to him, وَمَاذَا عن فتنة الكلام أمير المؤمنين? How about the trials? So the scholar said to him, how about the fitna, the trials of speech, O Amir al-Mu'mineen? The trials of speech are huge trials. Because the trials of speech, fitnatul kalam, is not only that you speak that which is good. It's not only that you need to verify that what you're saying is good. It's not only that you want to verify that what you're saying is for the sake of Allah. But there is another trial here. Is that you need to be the first person to act upon this speech. Otherwise, people will benefit of this speech and you'll be thrown into the hellfire. That is a great trial. That's a great fitna for speech. So you want to verify that it is good. You want to verify that it is right. And you want to verify you're saying it for the right purpose. But thereafter, you'll be speaking all of this. You'll be speaking and speaking and speaking, giving da'wah and talking to the people and so on. And you're bound by all of this, aren't you? You're required to uphold what you preach. And that is extremely difficult, and it's extremely hard. So he said to him, how about the triumphs of speech, O Amir al-Mu'mineen? And then Umar ibn Abdul Aziz started to cry profusely. And Umar was given a speech one day, and then the people's hearts became tender, and they started to weep, and Umar stopped. And they said to him, why don't you carry on, so that we may all benefit? And he said to them the same thing that the scholar had said to him before. Inna kalama fitna. Speech is fitna. And then he said, وَالْأَحْرَى بِالْمُؤْمِنِ أَنْ يكون فعله أكثر من كلامه أو أن يفعل لا أن يتكلم أو يكون فعله أكثر من كلامه. And it is more befitting for the believer to act more than to speak. And then he ended his speech. So speech in general, even if it is good, there are great trials in speech. Many phases, many stops, you should need to pause many times. You want to pause to verify that it is good. Well, particularly if you're speaking about the religion, وَلَا تَقُولُوا لِمَا تَصِفُ أَلْسِنَتُكُمُ الْكَذِبَ هَذَا حَلَالٌ وَهَذَا حَرَامٌ لِتَفْتَرُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ الْكَذِبَ إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَفْتَرُونَ عَلَى اللَّهِ الْكَذِبَ لَا يُفْلِحُونَ. And do not say to that which your tongues ascribe, this is halal and this is haram, to fabricate lies against Allah. Most surely those who fabricate lies against Allah will never prosper. So you want to verify that it is correct, you want to verify it's authentic, you want to be speaking on the basis of knowledge, not ignorance. You want to verify that what you're saying it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not for the sake of the people, and not for the sake of celebrity, and not for the sake of being called shaykh or qari or da'i or any of that. But after all of this, and you have done all of this, the problem is all of that he said, you will now have to live by it. You have to live according to it. Otherwise, you will be benefiting the people with knowledge that you will be deprived of its benefit. So you may become قنطرة الناس إلى الجنة ويقذف بك في النار. You become a bridge on which people, cross to al-Jannah, and then you are thrown into the hellfire. So that is من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليقل خيرا أو ليصمت. He who believes in Allah and the final day, let him speak good or stay silent. The other one, من كان يؤمن بالله, do you remember it? ومن كان, say after me, ومن كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليكرم جاره. And he who believes in Allah and the final day, let him honor his neighbor. Let him treat his neighbor with generosity and graciousness. So, Yukrim Jara, do you know who is Jara, by the way? Who is Jaro? The scholar said, Zuhri said it is 40 houses down this way, 40 houses down this way, 40 houses down this way, 40 houses down this way. So it's a radius of 40 houses. Basically, if you're talking about patriotism, are Muslims patriotic? By nature, they should be patriotic. By nature, they should want the good of all people. But they're not patriotic in the negative sense of patriotism, because patriotism has been used as another form of tribalism, clanism, to basically usurp the rights of others and to violate others on the basis of, rooting for your own people and, allegiance to your own people, siding with your own people. Patriotism in Islam does not have those negative connotations. But patriotism in Islam, the concept of ikram al-jar, the concept of kind treatment of the neighbor, means that it goes out in circles. So the people that are most deserving of your kindness are your next door neighbors, as the Prophet ﷺ said to Aisha, when she asked him about two neighbors that she has, which one should she be more generous toward? He said to her, أَقْرَبُهُمَا بَابًا إِلَيْكِ, the one who has the closer door to you. So it means that the Muslims have this obligation to be good to the neighbor. And this neighbor is Muslim, non-Muslim, it's just a neighbor. And then it goes out in circles. So that is the concept of patriotism in a positive sense. So here al-jar, like Zuhri said, 40 houses this way, 40 houses this way. And beyond. It is basically, but you have to be most beautiful to the one that's next door, and then the one that's after, and so on and so forth.
40 houses fun?
Huh?
40 houses fun?
40 houses what?
Is that fun?
Final word? No, it is not final when it comes in the revelation, the Quran or the Sunnah, right? I didn't say it is, in the Quran or the Sunnah. I said the scholars mentioned one of them is Zuhri, one of the greatest scholars, one of the greatest tabi'een, scholars of tabi'een. So it gives you an indication, gives you a hint. When anything that is short of the Quran and the Sunnah is not used as a decisive, definitive proof, right? Yeah, but it does give you an indication. يستأنس به. So it's basically corroborated evidence, not a decisive, definitive one. Right? Okay. So فَلْيُكْرِمْ جَارَهُ. There are so many hadiths certainly about ikram al-jar, but I would choose some for you. One of the hadith about ikram al-jar is famous and everybody knows it. This is also reported by Bukhari and Muslim. And also reported, this one is reported by Ibn Umar, Bukhari and Muslim from Ibn Umar and Aisha radiallahu anha. The Prophet said, ما زال جبريل يوصيني بالجار حتى ظننت أنه سيورثه. Jibreel continued to exhort me about the good treatment of the neighbor until I thought that he will give him part of the inheritance, that he will give him a share of the inheritance. So he continued to exhort him, tell him about, how important the good treatment of the neighbor is. And the Prophet ﷺ thought that the next thing Jibreel would say is that the neighbor will have a share of the inheritance, along with the family relatives. That shows you how this is big, right? You just think about this. This is really big. So think about your neighbors, that you try to do something good for your neighbors tomorrow. Really, because let's just do something. I met with a neighbor on my way out here. I just read the Hadith. So I actually approached him. He's like an older guy, older fellow. So he ended up being from India, and he lived in Iraq. He's not Muslim. He ended up being from India, and he lived in Iraq for some time. So I approached him, and I was, hesitant. He didn't Muslim to me, so I said, well, just let me approach him. So I approached him, and he said to me, "Shalonak." This is like kayf halak, but in Iraqi. He took me by surprise. So he said, kayf halak. I said, I'm good, alhamdulillah. Or I said, I'm good. I didn't say alhamdulillah, to be honest. I said, I'm good. And then we had like a little chat, and the guy turned out to be nice. The thing is, like, we fear sometimes that you will not be well received. But try. What is the most that you'll lose? he will be a little, unwelcoming. That's fine. You've tried, and that's it. You walk away. You're done. Okay. So I'm saying just take this and do something with it, right? And do something with it tomorrow and after tomorrow. Do something with it. This week should be your week of this hadith. You try to do, a little bit of each. Then, particularly with regard to kindness to the neighbors and the efforts, you guys are building blocks, right? So, Building Blocks is an organization that does good things for the people. This is advertising for the Building Blocks. But anyway, we'll start with an Edison chapter soon, inshallah. The idea here is the Prophet said a hadith that is really concerning. Really concerning. He said, this hadith was reported by Hatem from Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. He said, لَيْسَ الْمُؤْمِنُ الَّذِي يَشْبَعْ وَجَارُهُ جَائِعٌ. لَيْسَ الْمُؤْمِن, he is not a believer. الَّذِي يَشْبَعْ, he who fills his stomach. وَجَارُهُ جَائِعٌ, while his neighbor is hungry. While his neighbor is hungry. And can you imagine the weight of this hadith? Have we really thought of it? Have we really, as communities, as Muslim communities, we build masajid and we become neighbors of our, community here and so on and so forth. But have we really thought of going out to, check out on the homeless in our neighborhood and give them stuff? Well, we did, this campaign in Minnesota, which is, I don't remember the name of the campaign. It was a beautiful name. One time, or actually 2 times, we did something with ICNA and Islamic Relief, which was the Day of Dignity, where the Building Blocks was their local agent, distributing stuff. But the Building Blocks did, several days, dedicated for the homeless. You can't imagine first of all, those homeless are not necessarily slackers, and just, some of them had jobs and they just got laid off, and life is really hard here, and people don't really check on each other. There is no salat al-rahim here, and the family ties are weak, and so on. So you could end up being homeless in the blink of an eye. But the effect of this, and you're not too proselytizing in your approach to them. Basically, it's not going to be, we're Muslim, we came here to give you this, so, and just remember we're Muslim. Because it will be obvious that you're Muslim. And then you will say something here or there that will show that you are Muslim. You'll be asked and you'll say that you're Muslim. But basically, reach out to them and show them that we care about all people. So, لَيْسَ الْمُؤْمِنُ الَّذِي يَشْبَعُ وَجَارُهُ جَائِعٌ. جَارُهُ جَائِعٌ, he did not say his جَارُهُ Muslim جَائِعٌ. He said جَارُهُ جَائِعٌ, his neighbor is hungry. لَيْسَ الْمُؤْمِنُ الَّذِي يَشْبَعُ وَجَارُهُ جَائِعٌ. He's not a believer, he who fills his stomach while his neighbor is hungry. And as far as, إِذَاء الْجَارِ, or harming your neighbor, this is something that, at least if you're not going to do something good, you don't do something bad. There's a maxim, a medical maxim called first do no harm. So first do no harm. As individuals, as communities, as masajid, you should not harm your neighbor. Really, if you don't mow your lawn, you're harming your neighbor here. Isn't that true? Because you're depreciating the value of the properties around you. If you're not mowing your lawn, you're harming your neighbor, passively harming your neighbors. You're just being a nuisance for the neighbors because you're depreciating the value of the properties. There is so much, think about these things, harming your neighbor. How could I avoid harming the neighbor in any way? Being too noisy, reckless, and so on, is harmful. So this hadith reported by Ahmad al Hatem from Abu Hurayrah radiallahu anhu. Abu Hurayrah radiallahu anhu said that the Prophet ﷺ was asked about two women. You remember, you know this hadith, but I'll remind you of it. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said to the Prophet ﷺ, Inna fulana, fulana means so and so, you know, such and such a woman. Inna fulana, such and such a woman, تصلي بالليل وتصوم النهار, تصلي الليل وتصوم النهار, ولكن في لسانها شيء تؤذي جيرانها. فقال لا خير فيها, هي في النار. And then they said, وإن فلانة تصلي الخمس وتصوم رمضان وتتصدق بأثوار ليس عندها شيء غير ذلك ولكنها لا تؤذي جيرانها, قال هي في الجنة. Okay, so إن فلانة, such and such a woman, تصلي الليل, she prays all the night, وتصوم النهار, and she fasts during the day, ولكن في لسانها شيء, she has something in her tongue, which means she is a little bit, she is rude, offensive, impolite. تؤذي جيرانها, she harms her neighbors. So the Prophet ﷺ said, لا خير فيها, there is no goodness in her. There is no goodness in her. هي في النار, she will be in hellfire. That's what the Prophet ﷺ said. Keep in mind, she may be doing a lot more than you. Because you're not fasting most of the days, you're not praying most of the night. So you should be concerned. Because someone like this was actually sent to the hellfire because she was harming her neighbors. So someone like us should be quite concerned because we're not doing as much as she does, or she did. And then they said to the Prophet ﷺ, وَإِنَّ فُلَانَ تُصَلِّي الْخَمْسِ, such and such a woman, another woman, she prays the 5 obligatory prayers only. وَتَصُومُ رَمَضَانَ, and she fasts on Ramadan only. وَتَتَصَدَّقُ بِأَثْوَارٍ, and she gives charity of her cottage cheese. أثوار, al-aqid. Aqid is the cottage cheese. So, وَتَتَصَدَّقُ بِأَثْوَارٍ قَالَ هِيَ فِي الْجَنَّةِ. He said, she doesn't have anything else to give away, but she doesn't harm her neighbors. So the Prophet ﷺ said, هِيَ فِي الْجَنَّةِ, she will be in Jannah. So that puts things in perspective. That hadith puts things in perspective for us. The hadith of لَيْسَ الْمُؤْمِنِ مَنْ يَشْبَعُ وَجَارُهُ جَائِعٌ, he's not a believer, he who fills his stomach while his neighbor is hungry. A lot of people use this to say that Islam is communist or socialist. Ishtirakiyya. You know, so when Ishtirakiyya or socialism, communism was like popular in our countries, everybody wanted to say that Islam is communist, socialist, so everybody was looking for a hadith. This is basically treating Islam like an orphan child that's looking for a parent, you know, to adopt it. So one time you try to say Islam is capitalist, so or socialist or whatever is popular. You will find people trying to say, well, this is Islam. So is Islam capitalist or socialist? Capitalist?
It's more capitalist than social.
Did I tell you that before?
Capitalist
Leans more to the capital. Yes, but you don't say it's capitalist. Islam is Islam. But if you have to say, you know, whether it's closer to capitalism or socialism, you will have to say it's closer to compassionate capitalism than it is to communism. Because basically the sacredness private ownership in Islam, that you do not touch, the belongings of others, and they're entitled, and removal of customs and taxes and all of this, and free market ideas of Islam would make it a little bit closer to compassionate capitalism than it is to communism, or to the extreme forms of socialism, because it's a spectrum. So you can't really say it's closer, particularly with socialism. Certainly it will be closer to compassionate capitalism than it is to communism. But when it comes to socialism, you can't really say, because socialism is a wide spectrum. If the Democrats are socialists, then Islam is certainly more socialist than them. So, but anyway, so the idea here is you don't want to say if it is capitalist or socialist. You want to say Islam is Islam, but then you will say that compassionate capitalism is closer to Islam than communism. Compassionate capitalism is closer to Islam than communism. Anyway, the last third of this is about, we're done with the neighbor, although there's much to say about the neighbor, but but remember the concept of patriotism, the neighborly, being neighborly, or a good neighbor is the essence of patriotism. Remember this issue of capitalism and in communism. Remember to always say that Islam is Islam, but if there is something, if I have to say which one is closer to Islam, then I would say this is closer to Islam. This stuff is very important for your good understanding of your deen and your confidence in your deen. And your deen is not an orphan child. It's not looking for adoption. Okay, so, which does not mean that Islam lays out, or lays down the details of governance for people. It leaves so much for the human intellect and for the exercise of experimentation, like trial and error, and so on and so forth. It lays down the guidelines, the major guidelines that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deemed necessary to be spelled out for people so that they don't transgress or trespass the bounds. But it leaves so much for the exercise of the intellect. Okay. So last part, which is the third part, وَمَنْ كَانَ, repeat, وَمَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ فَلْيُكْرِمْ ضَيْفَهُ, and he who believes in Allah and the final day should or let him treat graciously or generously his guest. Treat his guest with great hospitality. So, is the guest entitled to anything? Entitled to what? How many days?
1 day.
3 days. According to the majority, this is an emphasized sunnah. But according to Imam Ahmad and Imam al-Layth ibn Sa'd, it's obligatory. To the point where Imam Ahmad said if he refuses to host you, you could take away your qira, you could take away your entitlement. One of the two reports of Imam Ahmad, he said, you will take him to court, and at the other report of Imam Ahmad, he said you could take it, you could seize it. If you could lay your hand on your qira, which is basically you're not gonna take the diamond ring of his wife and run away. You're just taking a little bit of food, that's your qira. So why did Imam Ahmad say this? Because Imam Muslim, certainly Imam Ahmad is the teacher of Muslim. So when we say because Muslim reported, we're not saying that Imam Ahmad read this in Muslim. Imam Ahmad is Muslim's teacher and Bukhari's teacher. But the hadith was there. Before Muslim collected it, the hadith was there. And like I said before, it would be quite bad to say Imam Abu Hanifa, acted on this hadith, he found it in Bukhari or something, because Imam Abu Hanifa died 42 years before Bukhari was born. So you have to put, this is Tariq al-Tashri'ah, which we will not do tomorrow, by the way, because we are canceling Tariq al-Tashri'ah tomorrow so that the people, brothers who are going to ICNA do not miss it. So to encourage the brothers to go to ICNA and to make sure that they don't miss Tariq al-Tashri'ah, those who are going to the conference. But at any rate, so Imam Muslim reported, so this is the hadith that's reported in Muslim, and this is the hadith Ahmad acted upon. It's reported from Abi Shuraih radiallahu anhu, one of the Sahaba. And he said, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, للضيف ثلاثة أيام أو الضيافة ثلاثة أيام وجائزته يوم وليلة. Hospitality is for 3 days. وجائزته, and his best treatment is for 1 day and 1 night. Best treatment means what? You give full, like devoted attention to your guest for 1 day and night. And then there are 2 extra days where, he's entitled to hospitality, hosting him. But Allah knows that human beings are, weak. They have limited capacity. They have little resolve. So you're not going to be able to perform to be in your best for your a guest for 3 days. So just the first day, you try to be as attentive as possible to the needs of your guest and so on. But then he is entitled to 2 more days. And then after those 3 days, the Prophet ﷺ said, وَمَا أَنْفَقَ عَلَيْهِ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ فَهُوَ صَدَقَةٌ. Whatever he spends on him afterwards, it is charity. It is charity. So this is an encouragement from the Prophet ﷺ for the host, to show hospitality for more days. Because it is sadaqah, it's charity. وَلَا يَحِلُّ لَهُ, and it is not permissible for the guest. And then the Prophet ﷺ says this because Islam is not only idealistic, it combines between idealism and realism. Because there is no utopia on earth, and you have to understand this. So the Prophet ﷺ said, وَلَا يَحِلُّ لَهُ, and it's not permissible for the guest, and يَثْوِيَ عِنْدَهُ, to stay at his place, to stay at the place of the host, حَتَّى يُؤَثِّمَ, until he causes him to fall in sin. And then he said to the Prophet ﷺ, وَكَيْفَ يُؤَثِّمُ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ, how will he make it, how will that guest make the host fall in sin? قَالْ يَثْوِي عِنْدَهُ حَتَّى لَا يَجْدَ مَا يَقْلِهِ بِهِ. He will stay with him until he has nothing to offer him, until he has nothing to offer him. So the guest also should be sensitive, considerable. Now, so this is a very powerful hadith. The Prophet was talking about an entitlement here. The 3 Imams, Abu Hanifa, Malik, and Shafi'i, said this is a sunnah, and it's emphasized, and it is really important, and you're really bad if you don't do it, but it is not wajib on you. It's not obligatory on you. Imam Ahmad and Imam al-Layth ibn Sa'd said it is wajib, that he is entitled to this, and he can take you to court if you don't host them. But at least what we have to learn as a community here, that if we're not going to be able to do this and take people to our homes, we should have a place for them to stay. Right? As communities, we should have like a guest house for people or travelers and so on. It is so, shameful that many people, many immigrants who come here, stay in the basements of churches because the Muslim community is not accommodating them. they do stay in the basements of churches. You know, what do you think their feelings will be? What do you think the take-home message will be? You know, staying, you know, in the basement of a church and being treated very nicely by the pastors and the priests and so on. So giving food and, you know, clothes and, you know, getting someone to play with their kids every day. They do this. So, well, you know, those are immigrants, this is a very critical time. It's a time of weakness, you know, and for immigrants who come to a new land and we don't know anything around them and so on. It's a time of vulnerability and weakness. And if we do not accommodate them and embrace them, they will be embraced by others. So that is a great shortcoming on our part. Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As said, مَنْ لَمْ يُضَيِّفْ فَلَيْسَ مِنْ مُحَمَّدٍ وَلَا مِنْ إِبْرَاهِيمٍ. He who does not host his guests does not belong to Muhammad, nor does he belong to Ibrahim, because they were of the most generous prophets. So he who does not host his guests does not belong to Muhammad, nor does he belong to Ibrahim. And Abu Hurayrah passed by people one day, the dwellings of the people, and فاستضافهم فلم يضيفوه. So he asked them to host him, and they refused. You know, so that he could spend the night, but they refused. So Abu Hurayrah walked back to his right, and he got his food out, and he sat down. But you look at this, he is the student. He is the student of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So after they refused to host him, he, you know, did not, you know, imagine that he would actually be sitting alone eating. So he went and invited them to share the food with him. So they refused to his invitation. So he said to them, لا تنزلون الضيف ولا تجيبون الدعوة والله لستم من الإسلام على شيء. You do not, you know, host the guests, and you do not accept the invitation. You have nothing to do with Islam. You have nothing to do with Islam. لستم من الإسلام على شيء. Abu Darda had a similar encounter, and he said to them, ما أنتم على الإسلام من الإسلام إلا على مثل هذه هدبة الثوب. You have no relationship to Islam, or you do not hold on to anything of Islam except this, which is the end of the garment, the little end of the garment like this, هدبة الثوب. So we ask ourselves, why are we so backward? How could the Sahaba be who they were? They did these things. They did these things. They were raised by the Prophet ﷺ to be a generation of piety, generosity, graciousness, nobility, you know, integrity, loftiness of spirit, everything. And they did these things. So we only need to do them. We only need to do them to basically earn the reward, to basically become a righteous generation, you know, worthy of the help and support of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's repeat the hadith one more time, one final time, so that we can remember it. من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليقل خيرا أو ليصمت. ومن كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليكرم جاره. ومن كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليكرم ضيفه. جزاكم الله خيرا، أحسن الله إليكم، بارك الله فيكم، ونفع الله بكم، اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه، وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه، اللهم لا تسلط علينا بذنوبنا من لا يخافك ولا يرحمنا، اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا، اللهم اعف عنا يا كريم، اللهم اجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه، وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك